All right, let's dive into a story that, honestly, it feels like it's been told for generations. We're talking about an old man, Don Anselmo, a seemingly simple land deal, and a really profound lesson about what it actually means to own something.
So right from the get-go, I want you to think about this question. What's a promise really worth? Is it just the number on a piece of paper, or is it something deeper? Just keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this, because it's going to be a big deal.
Okay, so first up, we've got to meet the man at the center of it all, Don Anselmo. And let me tell you, he is the perfect example of why you can't judge a book by its cover.
I mean, just look at this. You'd probably picture someone who's really fallen on hard times, right? His coat was old and faded, his gloves were all torn up, he even had a cane made from an old broken umbrella. Seriously, from the outside looking in, you'd think this guy had next to nothing. But here's where it gets interesting. It's all about how he carried himself. When he walked in to meet the Americans who wanted to buy his land, he didn't just shuffle in, no way. He paused, he bowed to everyone in the room, and then he very slowly, very deliberately took off his hat and those worn-out gloves. It was this moment of pure dignity. You just knew, right then and there, this was not an ordinary man.
Okay, so the whole thing kicks off with what seems like a totally normal land deal. Don Anselmo agrees to sell his amazing old orchard to some Americans for a set price. Pretty standard stuff. But then, the buyers get the land surveyed and whoa, it turns out the property is more than double the size they thought it was. So being decent folks, they go right back to Don Anselmo and offer to double the price. Seems like the fair thing to do, doesn't it?
Well, you'd think so, but not for Don Anselmo. He just refused. Flat out refused the extra cash. He basically said, look, we agreed on a price, we shook hands, my word is my word. He actually saw their offer of more money as an insult to his honor, like they were trying to buy his integrity. And that's the key right there. For him, the principle of the thing was way more important than the money.
So the deal goes through at the original price. The Americans are the proud new owners, they move in, and you'd think that's the end of the story. But nope, it's not over. Not by a long shot. Because a whole new problem is about to pop up. And that problem? It was the kids. Every single day, without fail, a bunch of children from the local village, Rio and Medio, would just pour into the orchard. They were running around, playing, basically treating this private property like it was their public park. The new owners were, understandably, completely confused. And we're not just talking about them cutting through the property. These kids were setting up shop. They were playing under the trees, building little pretend fences, even picking blossoms off the branches. Now, the Americans were getting frustrated, for sure, but they also wanted to be good neighbors and handle it the right way.
So they figure, hey, let's call Don Anselmo. He's a respected elder. Maybe he can talk to the kids' families. So they bring him back in, explain what's happening, and ask if he can please tell the children to stay off their land. They thought he was coming in to solve a simple trespassing problem, but what he was really about to do was drop a bombshell.
And right here, this is the moment the whole story pivots. Don Anselmo just listens, very patiently, to their whole complaint. And then he reveals something about that orchard that just changes everything. His answer was so simple, it was mind-blowing. He basically says, I sold you the land, but I didn't sell you the trees. I mean, can you even imagine their faces? What do you mean? You sold the orchard but not the trees? That doesn't make any sense.
And this is the heart of the whole story. Don Anselmo explains this beautiful tradition he had. For decades, every single time a child was born in the village, he would go out and plant a tree for them. So that orchard, it wasn't just a piece of land with trees on it. It was a living, breathing record of every child in that community.
So his point was crystal clear. He couldn't sell the trees because they weren't his to sell. They belonged to the children of the village. So those kids playing in the orchard, they weren't trespassing. They were visiting property that was, in a very real sense, their own.
Wow. So this reveal creates this incredible clash of cultures, right? Two totally different ways of looking at the world. But the amazing part is how they managed to resolve it.
Just think about this for a second. On one side, you have the Americans' view, ownership is a legal document, a deed. You buy the land, you own everything on it. Simple. But for Don Anselmo, ownership was something else entirely. It was a moral legacy. It was tied to people, to promises, not to paper. For him, value wasn't measured in dollars, it was measured in honor and community. And here's the best part. Instead of getting lawyers involved and fighting it out, the Americans did something truly remarkable.
They chose to respect this unwritten rule. So they spent that whole winter going from house to house, and they bought every single tree, one by one, from its actual owner, the children of the village. They chose to honor the legacy, not just enforce a contract.
So when you step back and look at this whole story, what's the big takeaway from this tale of principles and trees?
It really all boils down to the power of one person's integrity. Just one. Don Anselmo wasn't trying to scam anyone or be difficult. He was just living by his code, a code of honor that meant more to him than any amount of money you could throw at him. His principles were simply not for sale.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? Don Anselmo's real legacy wasn't the land itself. It was the values he lived by. His integrity, his generosity, that bond he created between the people and the place, that was the real inheritance he left behind.
So it leaves us with this one last thing to think about. We live in a world that's all about contracts and deeds and the fine print. But this story, it kind of asks us, what about the unwritten promises? What do we owe to the legacies and traditions of the past? And maybe more importantly, how do we honor them today?